technical problems. Okay, we'll start with our learning sponsors. The Year of Learning, Sue and Arnie Gerlich, in memory of Malka Pearl Mann and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pearl Rosner Bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of the family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Cheryl Schur, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edel Bas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gittler, Avrameir ben Shimon, and Martha Gittler, China Bas Yeshaya. Friends of Toby Peres, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levy, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi. We also have Month of Learning by Stanley Pressler in memory of his wife, Hayalea bat Ze'ev HaKohen. Mindel and David Cheslow in memory of her mother, Shosha bat Bear Leib. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her mother, Ita bat Nachman ben Yamin. We have a week of learning sponsored by Aviva Hochsander Sulzberger and Vernon Sulzberger in memory of her late husband, Ephraim ben Yitzchak Aryeh, and her mother, Malka bat Yisachar. Marcia and Gary Schrager, a week of learning in memory of her father, Shmuel ben Meir. Lenny Bahar, a week of learning in memory of her husband, Yitzchak ben Menachem. We also have, today is the 21st, a day of learning by Rabbi Moshe Kranzler, in memory of his mother, Chana Bas Harav Gershon. For Shabbos, we have a day of learning and Torah Fund by Linda and Herman Newman, in memory of her brother, Yaakov ben Avraham, and Rabbi Lenny and Marilyn Zucker for Shabbos, in memory of his mother, Elka Bas Harav Shmuel. And Shemas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velpi Yashir Shem Matzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Kaben Shtiyar.
Amen. I can hear you now, Rabbi Green.
Great, good.
Erwin is on his side.
What?
Erwin is on his side.
Erwin is on too? Good. Okay. All right, so we're going to start.
Rabbi, one question. What's the sense in Israel about the ceasefire?
I haven't been listening to the news, to be honest, because it's been too depressing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if people will say that it was adequate. Okay.
That's the argument now.
All right, that they patched Hamas well enough. I don't know. The attitude we kept hearing is that Israel should just bomb the whole Gaza Strip and Gamarnu. But we'll see. Okay? You're dealing not just with the war there, you're dealing with the propaganda issue. In the States and in Europe, you can see that there are serious issues going on. Okay.
Thank you.
Even there in Boca, there was some sort of pro-Palestinian rally, I understand. All right, we're on Mem Amud Aleph. It's about 4 lines down on the Amud Tashma. Okay, you remember that the whole Gemara was dealing with the lottery and the removal of the lots by the Kohen Gadol. Ideally, the one for Hashem, it would be preferred that that's in the right hand. The other one for Azazel in the left. And then he puts his hands with the lots on each animal. And from there, he would proceed to make his confession. And our whole discussion in the Gemara, just as a quick review and lead-in, was again to say whether the hands-on, the application, keep that word in mind, the application of the lots on top of the animals, whether that was part of the avoda or not part of the avoda. Okay? If we've already said that the lottery itself was questionable whether it was part of the avoda, and we seem to imply that it wasn't, because if the lottery wasn't occurring, the Kohen Gadol could, by necessity, designate, okay, one animal for Hashem and one animal for Azazel. Okay, so I mentioned that as we now come to this new Mishnah. The new Mishnah is going to present a Braita, new Braita, that's also going to be challenging the view that Rabbi Yanai said that the drawing of the lots was not ma'akeh, was not indispensable. So Tashma, listen to the Braita, says the Gemara. Mitzvah lahagril ulehitvadot. Lo higril v'lo hitvada kasher. According to this Braita, it's going to get a little more complicated, so I'm slowing down a little bit than what we did yesterday. It is a command to do the lottery and to testify, to give the confession. And I'm going to put in the word here, however, okay? If he did not draw the lottery and did not confess, the service is still valid. Okay? So that would seem to tell us that the lottery is not ma'akev, that it's not dispensable. It's not indispensable. And if you're going to say also that part of the lottery is the laying on of the application of the lots, ema seifa, I would say look at the end, namely which tells us, Rabbi Shimon Omer, lo higril kasher, lo hitvada pasul, where Rabbi Shimon says if he didn't do the lottery, it's still valid. But if he didn't confess, then it is invalid. Okay? So what's the Gemara going to ask? Ma'i lo higril, what do we mean when we say that he didn't do the lottery? Ilema lo hiniach. If we say that simply implies that he didn't apply the lots on the animal. Miklal de Rabbi Shimon Savar, Hagrala ma'akva akava. Does this seem to imply that Rabbi Shimon holds that the lottery is indispensable? Bahatanya, but aren't we taught in a Braita? Meid echad mehen, if one of the goats were to have died, mevi chavero shalo bahagrala, we bring another goat that wasn't participating in the lottery. Divrei Rabbi Shimon, but that's the view of Rabbi Shimon. Now, so what happens? Rabbi Shimon lo yada mai ka'amre Rabbanan. But the problem is that Rabbi Shimon is not aware precisely what the rabbis were saying in response to Rabbi Yanai. V'hachi ka'amar lo. And this is what he believed they were saying. I hagrala mamash ka'amritu. If we're saying that the lottery is the actual drawing of the lots, okay, and it's not ma'akva paligna alaychu bahakada, then I have an argument with you only in one case, in one halacha. I hagrala the ka'amritu hainu hanacha. But if we're saying that part of the lottery is also the application of the lots on top of the animals, paligna alaychu batarte, then I disagree with you on two counts, okay? Right? Both in regards to drawing the lottery and in terms of how the confession has to be carried out. Okay? So let's go now to a new braita. Tashma. Okay? And before I go into this braita, I want to just point out something very quickly. Remember, we said that there were a series of avodot, actually. One of which we're describing now is the whole business with the goats. Prior to that, however, the Kohen Gadol had to go and prepare his own ox, his own bull, really, for an offering. Okay? And so it would appear, okay, that he made a confession over the bull, and that would come before the drawing of the lots over the goats. If that's the case, what happens? Then we need to see. Tashma, says this braita, par ma'akev et hasa'ir, that the bull is indispensable, according to the braita, for the carrying out of the goats. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Let's see. V'sa'ir ein ma'akev et apar b'matnot shebebifnim. But the goat, okay, in other words, the whole business with the goats in terms of the lottery, the application, the confession, all of these things, ein ma'akev et apar b'matanot shebifnim, that it is not such that it disqualifies the bull from any application of its blood inside the Kodesh Kadoshim. Now, Bishlema par ma'akev et hasa'ir. That's acceptable when we say that the bull is indispensable prior to the goats. Why? De'i admei l'sa'ir makame par, because were it such that we preceded the goat before the ox, before the bull, I'm sorry, lo avad v'lo klom. It's like he did nothing. Ela sa'ir ein ma'akev et apar ma'inihu. But the fact that we said that the goat, it is not ma'akev, it doesn't, it's not indispensable for the bull. What are we saying here in this case? What is it referring to? Ilema dei akadem matnot depar behechal mikame matnot desair bifnim. If we're saying that we preceded the sprinkling, the application of the blood of the bull in the heichal, okay, before the application of the blood of the goat. That's the chatas goat, remember? Okay? inside, okay, namely inside the Holy of Holies. Chuka katibaho. But in the pasuk describing this practice, we have the word chukah, a statute, which implies excuse me, it can't be changed. The order is fixed. Okay? Elalav. But rather, it's not what the Bright is trying to tell us. The akte matnot depar bifnim mekame hagrala. That we must precede the application of the blood of the bull before that of the lottery. Umidesidra lama akva. Okay, and that in this case, the order, the sequence of the drawing of the lots is not ma'akev. Ikara hagrala nami lo ma'akva. And so therefore, that would tell us that the lottery it very self should not be considered right? Is not indispensable. No, says the Gemara arguing. The akte matnot depar b'mizbeach. Excuse me. Mekame matnot desair behecha. No, says the Gemara. Maybe what it's trying to tell us is that we precede the application of the blood of the bull on the altar before the application of the goat's blood in the hechel. The Rabbi Yehuda, and that would be the view of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, Devarim hane'asim b'bigdei lavan b'chutz lo ma'akvei. But those things that were done while the Kohen Gadol is wearing his white linen garments outside of the Kadshe Kadoshim is not indispensable. Now, Gemara wants to clarify this. Vaha b'matanot shebifnim katani. But we were teaching about the application of the blood inside, namely in the Kadshe Kadoshim. Ella, rather, says the Gemara, trying to clarify, Hamani, whose view are we talking about? In other words, according to whom is this whole Braita an explanation being presented? Rabbi Shimon. It's the view of Rabbi Shimon, Hagrala lo ma'akva, who held that the lottery itself was not indispensable. Ve'bayat ema. And if you want, I actually could say the following. Le'olam Rabbi Yehuda, that maybe this is also according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Unehi the besadra lo ma'akva. And it might be then that the sequencing, the order, okay, is not indispensable. Hagrela miha ma'akva. But the act of doing the lottery is nevertheless required, is indispensable. Va'azdu l'ta'amayu, and the two of them, namely Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, each were following their own line of reasoning. Titania, as we continue now on the next Amud, here's the pasuk. Okay, that's the basis of the machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Ye'amad chai lifnei Hashem lechaper alav. So, ad matai yeh zakuk la'amod chai. For how long is it necessary for the goat that was marked for Azazel to stand there? Ad she'at matan damo shel chavilo. Until the actual application of the blood. Right? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ad Sha'at Vidui Dvarim, until the time of the verbal confession of the Kohen Gadol. B'mai kamiflige. Then what are they arguing about? Kidatanya, as taught, okay, the Braita, regarding the following pasuk that we just read. Lechaper, when it says to atone, b'kaparat damim hakatuv medaber, is it really talking about a atonement that's gained verbally? Is that what it's really talking about? V'chein hu omer, and this is what he says. V'chila mekaper et hakodesh. Okay, namely that. What is it talking about? He's made an end to atoning in the Beis HaMikdash, in the sanctuary. Malahalan b'kaparat damim, afkan b'kaparat damim, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So the same way here, right? It's the application of the blood. Okay, we had talked about. Now, what are we dealing with? Okay, so there it was the application of the blood that satisfied the requirement of atonement. So likewise here, it's atonement through the blood. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Shimon going to say now? He's going to take that same pasuk, right? And that same word, lechaper, and he's going to work it differently. Rabbi Shimon Omer, he says, the pasuk said, lechaper alav, namely, to make atonement over it. Bekaparat dvarim hakatuv medaber. But therefore, he understood it to refer to atonement gained through speech. That's what the text is talking about, the verbal confession. And so now the Braita, a new Braita. Tashmas is the Braita. Sha'alu Talmidav et Rabbi Akiva. Now, we're not leaving totally this earlier discussion. We're going to a sidebar, if you will. The students asked Rabbi Akiva, Allah bismol, mahu sheikh zorliami? What happens if the Kohen Gadol pulls the lottery out for Hashem in his left hand? Can't he switch hands and put it in his right? Amarlehem. So he said to them, right? Al titnu makom l'tzdukim lidot. He says, don't give the tzedukim an opportunity to, let's say, lidot here might mean to gain the upper hand, okay? To push the others, remove the practice of the sages and present their view, okay? Tama, what's the reasoning? Da'al titnu makom l'tzdukim lidot. In order not to give tzdukim the opportunity to dominate, so to speak. Lav hachi, if it were not the case, mehadrinamle, we would perhaps have him switch hands. It ought to be permitted. Baha amrat, hagrala ma'akva. But here you say that the lottery is indispensable. V'kevan de kiva'ate, small, hechi mahadrinamle. And since it's sort of come up in the left hand, how is it possible to transfer it to the right? Right? Okay. What happens? Okay, we've got this Braita now. We see the argument of on the pasuk. How do we proceed? Okay. Amar Rava, Hachika Amre. This is what they're trying to tell us. Allah Hagoral Bismo. Let's assume, says Rava, that the lottery marked came up right in the left hand. Mahu Sheikh Zero Lo Seiro B'Yamim. Does that mean the Rabbi Akiva's students are asking that not only do we have to switch, the lottery inheritance of hands, but we must switch it and therefore put it on the goat that's on the Kohen Gadol's right side. Amar lehem. And what he said to them was, Al titnu makom l'tzdukim lirdot. Don't give the Sadducees an opportunity for their perspective. In other words, to dominate. Okay? In other words, don't give them any ideas, to imply that the hagrala, that the lottery is not required, is not ma'akba. Okay. Picking up then, as we continue with another Braita. Tashma, listen to this Braita. Ilu ne'amar et hasayir asher alav. Okay. Again, we're dealing with this hagrala, with this lottery. If the verse said the goat upon which the lot, right? Hasayir asher alav. Hayiti Omer, I would have said, Yinichenu alav, that you actually have to put the lottery, right on the animal. Okay? In other words, physically place it on the animal's body. Talmud Lomar, Allah. Why? Because the pasuk says on it. Kevan sha'ala shuv enot tzarich. Since the verse says it, so to speak, came up, that would seem to imply that the actual, let's put it, hands-on top of the goat with the lottery in one's hand on the animal is not required. That would therefore tell me again that the hagrala is not ma'akeh, that it's not indispensable. Lamai, for what purpose then does this Braita come? Ilema la mitzvah, if it comes to tell us that the whole act of the hagrala is mitzvah, right? Miklau dahanacha mitzvah nami mo. Would that not seem to infer that putting the lot on top of the animal is also a mitzvah? Elalav, rather that's not the case. La'akev, it comes to tell us that it is indispensable. Ushmamina, and we learn from this, hagrala ma'akba, hanacha ulo ma'akba, that the act of doing the lottery, is clearly part of the, let's call it for the moment, avoda, and therefore it is a mitzvah to do the lottery. But in terms of the actual putting the item on the animal itself, it's not indispensable. Okay? All right. Rav is not happy with this process, let's say, this flow. Hachikama. This is what it really means to teach us. Ilu ne'amar asher alav. If it were clearly written and stated, the goat upon which the lot, right? Hayiti omer, yenichenu alav ad she'at shchita. I might say, therefore, that you have to put that lot down on the animal until the time that's to be slaughtered. Talmud Loma, excuse me. But the pasuk doesn't say Asher Alav. It says Asher Allah. Right? Kevan Sha'ala Shuv Enot Tzorich. Right? Asher Allah. Right? Asher Allah. Sorry. Kevan Sha'ala, since it came up. In other words, he's raised the lottery, the lot, from the receptacle and held it in his hand. So he did fulfill, so to speak, the requirement of the pasuk by raising the lot up. Therefore, the implication is Shuv Einot Tzarich, that he does not have to put it down again on top of the animal. Okay, that's Rava's explanation. Now, remember our Mishnah said that according to Tanakama, right, if I go back real quick, right? He said, Lashem Chatat, right? That was the view of Tanakama. Rabbi Yishmael responded and said, okay, he simply can say Lashem, and he doesn't have to say Chatat. Okay? So another brighter. Tashma, Asahu Chatat. Then he made this animal, one of the goats, a chatas offering. Hagorau Osehu Chatat, according to the brighter. In other words, it is the drawing of the lottery and the specific designation on the lot that now declares this animal to be a chatas. Ve'ein Hashem Osehu Chatat. But the verbal designation, says the Braita, right, does not make it a chatas, a sin offering. Sheyachol, says the Braita, it might be possible to say as follows: V'halo dinhu, that this is a kind of kal v'chomer, a kind of a fortiori argument. Uma b'makom shelo kidei shagorah, whereas we have a situation where it's the lottery, okay? In other words, it does not consecrated, Kidesh Hashem, but the divine name is capable of making something consecrated. Makom Shekidesh Hagorah, a place where the lottery and the lot actually does cause consecration. Eino din sheikadesh Hashem. Shouldn't it be logical then that designation of using the divine name should therefore make it holy? Okay. So let's take an example, right, that we might think of. Right? How would you take an example of a case the Gemara wants to think of us, to remind us, where verbal designation is such that's going to render an item a chatas. Okay? Let's think for a moment and come up with the following possibility. You have a woman that, let's say she gave birth. And at the end of a certain amount of time, right, she has to bring 2 bird offerings. One is a olah and one is a chatas. At what point does that animal, that bird offering, become designated a chatas? Well, one of the times is when she purchases it and designates it herself as this is going to be my chatas. And if she doesn't do that, then the other time that that particular bird might be designated a chatas is when the Kohen is offering it for her. Okay? But there clearly is an example where verbal designation of the status of a chatas is applicable. Okay? So if that's the case, we can see that this is a challenge here very clearly to the whole idea that the Braita was saying. Okay? As a result, okay, what happens? We have the following. Talmud Lomar, V'asahu chatas, and he shall make it a chatas. Hagaral oseh chatas, v'ein Hashem oseh chatas. Nevertheless, the Skal V'chomer does not work, and we say the Braita is still applicable by telling us that it is the lottery that makes the animal chatas, and not, it would appear, a verbal designation. Now, let's look at this at the beginning of Lamed Aleph, right? Because if we look at the beginning of Lamed Aleph, okay, what do we have here? A question of, well, whose view is it then in that Braita? Where did the Braita come from? It must have come from Sifra, right? Sifra is the halachic midrash on Vayikra. Okay, so the Gemara says, Stam Sifra Mani, in general, okay, the statements of the Sifra belong to whom? Rabbi Yehuda. Vakatani, and therefore there it teaches as follows, Hagoral oseh chatat, v'ein Hashem oseh chatat. Clearly it says there that the lottery designates it as the sin offering and not, okay, a verbal designation of the status of the animal makes it a sin offering, a chatas. Alma, therefore, hagrala ma'akva. This would come back and seem to imply that the lottery is ma'akev, that it is certainly indispensable. Tiyufta, demanda amar hagrala lo ma'akva tiyufta. Indeed, this is a proof text, okay, that tells us that indeed that the lottery is indispensable, and indeed it is a true proof text. Now, Gemara is going to, just to give you a heads up, for Shabbos, what does the Gemara want to do? It takes that example that we gave of the woman designating one of the bird offerings after the birth, right? And it says, is that really a valid example? Can you really use that? Or do you say here that that's an exceptional case and therefore it's not appropriate to use that? Okay? And so that's what the Gemara is going to continue to do on Mem Aleph, Amud Aleph, okay? And begin to trying to clarify finally our argument as whether the lottery is ma'akev or not. Okay? And that will follow over, okay, all the way up to the Mishnah towards the bottom, middle of the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, okay, where we'll get to a new topic at that point, and that will be the, call it the thread or the strip of wool that is red, that is crimson, that is tied on the horns of the animal. Okay, so we'll stop there. All right, on Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. All right, and wish everybody a good Shabbos.
Thank you very much. Have a good Shabbos to you.
Good
Shalom
Shabbos.
Yisrael.
All right, just a